Welcome back to my channel, and for today I'm going to be talking about the Grant Stone Dune PTB or Plain-Toe Blitzer shoe. This is in Dunechromix Cel, which is very similar to natural chromexcel Cel. Before I say anything else, Grant Stone did send me this pair of shoes just to review for this channel. So thank you very much, Grant Stone, for being so generous to send me another pair of footwear to wear and enjoy and talk about on this channel. So essentially this is a sponsored video. However, I do want to say that I do not just accept sponsors from any brand. In fact, I will only accept a sponsored video from a brand that I have high confidence in, where I believe I'm probably going to receive something of very high quality. And in the past, I have turned down sponsors because of this reason. I'm not in the business of wanting to trash brands on this channel. I'm only interested in brands that I can mostly say good things about. So, as usual, I'm going to try to be as objective as I can when reviewing these shoes. Of course, I have my own biases and certain shoes fit me better than others. But the point is, I'm going to try to be as unbiased as I can so that you can decide as the viewer if this is something you're interested in purchasing. So Grant Stone sent me these at the very end of November, I believe November 30th. And since then, I've tried to wear them as many times as I can. They have about 8 total wears since I've received them. And I've not worn them on consecutive days to give them some rest. But I'm going to try to share with you what it's been like breaking these in and give you the pros and cons and how these differ from some of my other PTB shoes. I am no stranger to PTB shoes. I own several from Aldens. I own one from Crockett & Jones. But the most important PTB that I want to compare these to is the Alden 9501, which I have owned since 2019. So these have about 5 years of wear on them. I've worn these at least 2 or 3 times a month since 2019, and sometimes many more times than that. They're one of my favorite shoes. They're just so comfortable. They fit really well. Well, there's a Trader Joe's sticker on the bottom of this sole. And one of the reasons I was so interested in the Grant Stone Dune PTB is because I wanted to get something that I could alternate with my Alden PTB, because I didn't want to wear these out too quickly. It looks very similar. But as you're going to find by the end of this video, I think you'll agree that you'll see there's a lot of ways in which the Grant Stone is different from the Alden PTB. So for this video, I don't think I need to go into all the detail about how great the quality control and finishing is of Grant Stone. It seems like most people already are aware of that. Instead, I'd rather focus on how this shoe differs from some of my other PTBs, especially the Alden pair in natural chromexcel Cel, because I believe that might be more helpful for you, the viewer of this video. And then you can decide if this is a shoe that you want to pick up in the future. So let's get started. This is how the shoes looked when they first arrived. As you can see, they just look stunning. The quality control and the detail is about as good as it gets. There were a few very small minor scuffs or scratches on them, and then a really tiny dent on one of the heels that you can barely see. And honestly, if these kind of small blemishes bother you, I would just recommend not buying leather shoes. Or you can buy a pair of John Lobb, and then after a few weeks you'll find that you have these blemishes appear anyway on your shoes. Now first off, let me talk a little bit about the aesthetics of this shoe. It is a Plain-Toe Blitzer shoe, meaning it's just one large piece of leather that wraps around the foot. Another important thing to mention in terms of the aesthetics is that this shoe contains 5 eyelets. That is the preferred amount to me. 4 or 3 can work, but the problem is they're not going to lock you in as well as 5. And I personally think 5 just looks more balanced on a shoe. It just looks better. And then the shoe contains a reverse welt and a double leather sole. I want to point out that Grant Stone includes a very thick midsole within their leather sole. That midsole definitely gives the brand a noticeable improvement of support versus a lot of other brands on the market. So if having a lot of support is very important to you, this is one of the best options. Now this leather sole is, like I said, it's a double leather sole, meaning it's more thick than just a standard single leather sole, and it's very beautifully done. I love that they're using this lighter color on the edge. This natural edge color that Grant Stone has used on my pair, it's just perfect. And one detail I also love is the beige stitching that is on the reverse welt. This beige stitching, which is perfectly done, it matches perfectly with the shoes if you decide to use beige laces, which is what I'm using most of the time. These beige laces that you see, these are from Allen Edmonds. They're not from Grant Stone. I believe you can still buy these through Allen Edmonds because I bought some of these in early 2024. I just like that look of the lighter color laces with the darker upper. Now, the stock laces that came with the Grant Stone, they are totally fine. They're a darker brown, almost a gray color. I actually used them a lot when I was breaking in the shoes because I just found that they stayed tied better than the beige ones that I'm using. Now, another thing I want to mention is the heel stack. The heel stack in this Grant Stone PTB, there's no leather board. There's nothing artificial. It's all leather and a little bit of rubber for the top lift. And I will say that from my own experience, I can tell a difference between real leather heel stacks and fiberboard. There's just a little more support in a real leather heel stack. One of the things about Alden that's not been so popular is that it's known that they use leather board in their heel stacks, and this pair of PTBs that I have from Alden, these do have leather board in the heel stack. Now, the sole is a leather sole, and it's a very high quality leather sole, but the heel stack uses some leather board. And then at the heel, there's a nicely padded sock liner with a little bit of cushion in it to give you better comfort when walking. And then on top of the sock liner, you have a nicely stamped Grant Stone logo. And then below that, there is a steel shank. I've said many times on this channel that steel shanks are the best option in my opinion. The only exception that I've had so far is Crockett & Jones. They use wooden shanks, and they still somehow get an equal level of support as Grant Stone. I don't know how they do it, but they're the only exception. I think steel shanks are still the best way to go. In terms of the support of how these feel on my feet, it's about as supportive as it gets for my footwear. I don't know if I have another pair of footwear that has better support than these. The arch support shape is not the best out of all the lasts that I have. That would go to the modified last from Alden. That has the best arch support shape for me. But just generally speaking, I think that most men are going to find the arch support is very, very good in this pair of shoes, even if the shape is not as ideal as you want it to be. It is a more flat last on the inside of the foot because it's designed to fit a wide variety of men. This was not designed to fit men with a high arch under their foot. This is just a general kind of last for most men. And I think for most men, this is going to work out just fine. And in terms of comfort, these are excellent because of the double leather sole. Leather soles are just the most comfortable option that I've tried. I like them more than rubber soles in terms of comfort. And with these, you'll just notice that you don't feel rocks and pebbles as much under your feet. So nice to be able to walk around with a double leather sole like this from Grant Stone. Now let's move on to some more details about the shoe. The lining. It's a very soft lining. I find that it's very comfortable on my feet. I just think Grant Stone does a really good job with their lining as well as everything else in the shoe. The insole of this shoe contains a fairly standard full grain leather insole, so it's one of those smooth insoles that you find in a lot of other brands, especially British brands. But if you've ever tried a pair of Cheney shoes or Loke, it's basically the same as that. The smooth white colored leather insole is different from the Alden in that it's smooth, whereas the Alden has a sort of fuzzy feel to it. It's kind of hard to explain. Now let me talk about the natural chromexcel leather, or what is known as the Dunechromix Cel. I am a huge fan of natural chromexcel. I own about 6 pairs, I believe, in the color. Natural chromexcel just smells amazing when you open the box, and Grant Stone is no exception. Natural chromexcel is a leather that sometimes starts off stiff, but it will soften very quickly, and as you continue to wear it more and more, it just becomes very, very soft. It will stretch quite a lot too. It's known as one of the more pliable leathers. But it's also a leather that's easily going to get blemished. It's very susceptible to things like dents, scrapes, but it's just part of the experience with natural chromexcel. How do I deal with scrapes and little blemishes? Well, if it's a big enough blemish, I might use a little bit of Bic 4 conditioner just on the blemished part, and that's all I do. And then I just brush them. It's important to brush them, and you'll find that they do have a natural glow to them if you do brush them. That's the nice thing about chromexcel. It will glow just a little bit. You never want to put polish on it because waxed polishes especially do not mix with chromexcel. It's better just to brush them and use some conditioner. In terms of the color, this natural chromexcel is known as Dunechromix Cel. It does have a little bit more orange in it compared to some of the past natural chromexcel that Alden and Aldens would use. One other difference between this newer chromexcel versus the older chromexcel is that I noticed Grant Stone does use a little bit of polish on this upper. You can notice it just has a little bit of polish on it, not a lot, but my Alden 9501 did not have this subtle level of polish on it. But the thing is that natural chromexcel has a history of having so much variation that you could get a pair that looked like this in the past, or you could even have something more dark with a lot more brown in it, or you could have something very pale. So in the past, natural chromexcel varied quite a lot, whereas I believe now it's a little more consistent and has just a little more of an orange look to it, but it's still very close to the original color. Aldens stopped selling natural chromexcel shoes and boots sometime around 2021. I'm not sure why they haven't restarted selling them again, because the new version of natural chromexcel, it's very, very close to the previous version. So I don't know why Aldens is not making shoes and boots with the new chromexcel. I think most customers probably can't tell a big difference. And so far, I will say that this pair looks like it was a winner in the chromexcel lottery. You never really know how chromexcel is going to crease, and if I compare the creases on the Grant Stone to the Alden, you can see that the Grant Stone has actually creased better so far, whereas with my Alden pair, there are some deep creases on one of the shoes. You could probably call this loose grain. It doesn't really look bad at all, especially from a distance, and it doesn't bother me. I don't care. I still think they look great. But I'm just highlighting this to point out that sometimes these deep creases can show up after 3 or 4 years of wear. So at least in terms of how I would want my chromexcel to crease, these are exactly it. But like I said, you just never know what you're going to get with chromexcel. You can kind of see how I wore them during that time. This is how I wore them on the first wear. This is what they looked like, I believe, on the third wear. And this is what they look like now. This is December 31st, 2024. Probably the most annoying thing that I've done to these shoes is that I've somehow managed to get some dents on them. The thing is, chromexcel tends to dent pretty easily compared to other leathers. I saw that Preston Soto put out a tip in one of his videos that if you use a heat gun might be able to remove them in calf leather. I don't know if this will work on chromexcel. I've never tried it. But overall, these dents don't really bother me. I'm not going to do anything about it. The other thing that I've done is that the heels get scuffed up for some reason. I don't know if this is because of what I'm doing in my car when I'm driving, or maybe it's my desk at work. I don't know. It's a very common thing for me with a lot of my shoes. But other than that, they have normal wear on them. Now, these are made on the Grant Stone Leo Last, which, let me start off by saying, in terms of sizing, most people would probably go down a half size in these. That's exactly what I do. I wear them in the same size as the Alden Berry Last and the same size as the Parkhurst Last, the 602M. Normally I'm an 8D, but in this shoe I wear 7.5D and it fits me right. In fact, it's still a pretty generous fit even at 7.5D. So the Leo Last is an interesting last because the ball area is actually pretty wide. It's definitely more wide than the Alden Berry. You have a little bit of extra width at the widest part of the foot. You also have a little bit of extra volume above the toes. Now, it's not a huge amount, but it's definitely noticeable to me. But one key difference is that it has a more round shape to the toe than the Alden Berry. I wouldn't say the Berry is a pointed last, but it's definitely more pointy than the Leo Last. It's a little more dressy than the Leo, whereas the Leo's a little more casual. The total length between the Alden Berry and the Leo, and the total length is exactly the same when I measure them. In terms of the waist fit, both shoes are similar, but I would say the Grant Stone Leo just has a little bit of extra room at the waist. The two areas that the Leo differs greatly from the Berry though, number one is the instep. There's definitely more instep room in the Leo Last. I get much better closure with the Leo Last when I'm wearing these versus the Berry. You can see here with the Grant Stone Leo that I have about maybe 1/2 inch of space when the laces are tied, whereas with the Berry I have more space between the lacing gap. I would say the Berry is not a small instep, I would say it's more of like an average instep, whereas the Leo Last definitely is a more generous instep. And this is something that has been consistent with all of my boots from Grant Stone, as all of them are on the Leo Last, and they all have more instep room than the Berry Last to me. Now, the one other thing that's probably most important to know is that the heel is wider in the Leo Last. I mean, just look at that. You can see how wide it is compared to the Alden pair. I will say that the Berry Last heel is quite snug, and it doesn't feel quite right to me when I wear this size. It feels like it's almost a little too small, but there's no pain. I can still wear it just fine, but it just feels like it's not quite right. Now with the Leo, there's definitely a little bit more space in the heel. And for me, this doesn't cause me any trouble on my right foot, but on my left foot, I have a slightly slimmer heel. So I do have some heel slip with this pair of PTBs. Now the thing is that it's not severe, and on my right foot I don't have any heel slip. It's just on the left foot. This is not Grant Stone's fault, this is just how my feet are. And this is not the first time I've experienced this. I actually have a pair of Allen Edmonds McTavish shoes in Dunechromix Cel. I have the exact same issue with that shoe. The heel just feels a little bit too wide for me in the left foot. On the right foot, doesn't matter. But it's just something to be aware of. For some people, this might be problematic. And because this is not a boot, for some people this might be a problem because you don't have that extra leather that's wrapping around your ankles to secure you in the footwear. Now, the heel slip may simply just be because there is more width at the heel in the Last, but it's also possible that it may have something to do with the leather heel counter, because the leather heel counter is going to be more stiff than a plastic or leather board heel counter. It takes longer to conform to your feet. And I believe even Grant Stone have mentioned in the past that the heel counter can sometimes be the reason why people have heel slip. The advantage of having a leather heel counter is that it's not going to break down as easily and it should last longer, but the trade-off is it takes longer to break in and conform to your feet. Now, having said that, my heels are not slipping out of the shoes completely. Fortunately, that's not happening. If that were happening, that would be a big problem for me. And that has happened once in the past. I had a pair of Allen Edmonds Clark Street shoes. Once again, in natural Chromexcel, Cel, my left heel was just falling out of that shoe. No matter what I tried to do, I couldn't fix that problem, so unfortunately I let them go. So, what are the not so good things, or at least things that may be concerns for some men about this shoe? Well, there are some. One difference between this pair of Chromexcel Cel versus my Alden pair is that this Chromexcel Cel is definitely a lot more stiff. I don't know why that is, but for some reason, Grant Stone selected a much more stiff version of Chromexcel Cel for my pair, at least. And that actually contributes to the heel slip as well, because if you have a more stiff shoe, it's a lot easier to have heel slip if it fits a little bit large. This Grant Stone pair actually reminds me a lot of wearing a pair of shell cordovan shoes. If you've ever worn a pair of shell cordovan, you might notice that they are pretty stiff when you first get them. You might have a little bit of heel slip because of that stiffness at the heel. But then over time, it usually goes away. Sometimes Chromexcel Cel is more stiff than another pair. I have a pair of Allen Edmonds McTavish shoes, also in natural Chromexcel Cel. Those feel more stiff at the heel, whereas my Alden pair, it almost didn't even feel like Chromexcel Cel to me because it was just so soft. And this is a pair of Allen Edmonds Rush Street shoes. These were a lot more soft in comparison to my other shoes. So I don't know why that is, but sometimes Chromexcel Cel varies a bit in how the stiffness is within the shoe. Another thing worth mentioning is the weight. These are slightly heavier than my Alden pair. Not much, but slightly heavier. And that's probably to do with the fact that there's more leather in these shoes. The other thing to be aware of is the instep. The instep is definitely more generous than a lot of the other lasts. It's more generous than the Berry. In fact, I would say it's closer to the Alden modified last. So if you're a person who has a low volume foot at the instep, this last might not work for you. You just will have to try it and see. But if you're a person who needs a high instep fit, this might be an excellent last for you. So if the heel issue doesn't bother you and you need more instep room, this could be an excellent last for you. The width at the ball area, I think, will be plenty for most men. As I said before, it's a little more generous than the Alden Berry. You just feel like you have a little bit of extra room to breathe in the toe box area. Now, all things considered, I'm going to compare this to my 9501 shoes from Alden. So, in terms of the ball fit, which one do I think fits better for me? Well, I think the Grant Stone Leo fits a little better for me because it has a little bit of extra room. At least for my feet, I just feel like it's a little more of a natural fit for my ball area. One other thing I should mention about the ball fit is that in the Leo last, the widest part of my ball, it lines up exactly where it should on the shoe. Whereas with the Alden Berry last, I'm slightly forward of the widest part. Not much forward, but it's definitely noticeable that I'm slightly forward of the widest part of the shoe. And it doesn't really matter with the Berry last because it is such a generous last. And for most men, they don't have a problem with this because the ball area is still very generous. Now, in terms of the aesthetics of the ball area, which shape do I like best? Well, I do think the Berry looks a little nicer. It just has a slightly more dressy look to it. In terms of the instep fit, which one do I like better? Well, for me, there's no question that the Leo last fits me better at the instep. The Leo last just has a little more room than the Alden Berry. But it's going to depend on your foot. Some people, this might be too much instep room, whereas the Berry might fit them perfectly. In terms of the heel fit, which one do I like better? Well, I like the Alden Berry a little better because it's more snug. It locks me in better. Now, it could also be to do with the fact that the Alden pair has softer leather. That could be why I also don't have any heel slip in it. I'll say again that the Alden is not a perfect fit for me in the heel. It's almost a little bit too snug, and maybe that's because most people go down a half size in the Berry. Perhaps that's what makes the heel feel a little bit snug. In terms of support, I would say they're equal. Maybe slightly better for the Grant Stone because, again, there's no leather board in the Grant Stone. The Alden still has excellent support because it has a leather sole and there's also a steel shank, just like with the Grant Stone. But if having a little more support in the heel is important to you, then the Grant Stone would be a better choice. In terms of price and what you get, which one do I think is a better value? Well, considering the Alden costs over $550 if you were to buy these new at the time, I think I paid about $480, I think, because these were a display model that were sold to me. And I didn't know that they were a display model. It just so happened that the store employee gave me a discount because they were. But still, pretty expensive, about a $500 shoe. Whereas the Grant Stone is $385, definitely considerably less than the Alden. And if you were to buy this Alden now in 2024, it would cost over $600. So in terms of value, you're getting something at almost half price of the Alden. So there's no question in my mind that the Grant Stone is a better value in terms of the quality of materials that you get, but you also have to consider the last, the fit, and the total experience of the shoe. You can't only focus on the quality materials, but Grant Stone definitely has the edge in terms of what you pay and what you receive in terms of quality. If there was one thing I want to share that surprised me about this shoe, is that I thought it would be a lot easier to break in than the boots from Grant Stone, and that was not the case. Not really. This shoe was definitely very stiff and took a lot of time to break in. And I've only worn them 8 times so far, so they're still breaking in. But the thing I'm trying to get across is that I thought these would be way easier to break in than the boots, and it's not really the case. There's still that same Grant Stone stiffness that is in the other boots. Don't let that discourage you in any way because they do soften up and they do break in. It's just that you have to be more patient with Grant Stone. And it's the same with their shoes. You have to be patient. For example, the insoles of Grant Stone shoes, I don't know why this is, but they just take longer to make your impression in them. I've noticed this with all of my Grant Stone boots and also this pair of shoes. Whereas with Alden and Allen Edmonds, you get the impression very, very quickly. Usually after about 5 to 7 wears, you have a very good, deep impression. So you have to be patient with your foot creating its impression in the shoes or boots. Now, some of you might be asking, if I didn't receive these for free from Grant Stone, would I still want to buy them? I would say yes. This was something I've wanted to buy anyway for a while. In fact, I reached out to Grant Stone. I wasn't expecting them to send me this pair for review. This was a nice surprise to me that they sent me these, so I was considering getting them. But at this point, I would like to see Grant Stone come out with another version of this shoe, but I would like them to have it in either the saddle tan or the natural Minerva, and then I'd like them to keep the leather sole, the double leather sole, because they do have a version now in the tan saddle, but it comes with a very soft rubber sole. Nothing wrong with that really, but it's just not quite my thing. I just would much rather have a leather sole. One other subtle difference between this and the Alden pair is that the Grant Stone has a natural lighter colored edge on the sole edges, whereas the Alden is a little bit more dark. Now, both of them work perfectly with the natural Chromexcel. it's really just a matter of preference which one you like better. To me, they both look great. And one other thing is that people mention that natural Dunechromix Cel darkens over time. While that may be true most of the time, with this pair of Aldens, it really hasn't darkened very much at all. And I've worn these for 5 years. Now, I will say that I have not worn these in rainy conditions very much. I've mostly just worn them in dry weather. So that could be part of the reason why the color has not darkened very much. But they are almost exactly the same color as when I got them 5 years ago. How would I rate this shoe overall, considering everything that I've said in this video? Well, I would give them 4.5 stars out of 5. If I were rating these shoes without my own personal experience with them, I would give them a 5 out of 5 or a perfect score. But the only reason why I'm giving these 4.5 stars instead of 5 is simply because of the heel. And that's a subjective thing. I wish the heel was just a little bit more snug for my left foot. But if I were just rating these unbiasedly without me, I would say these probably deserve a 5 out of 5. There's really not much I can say about them that's bad, and I feel like I'm stretching quite a bit to find anything. So, in other words, for those of you who missed out on the Alden 9501, do I think that you will feel like you've got something subpar or not as good as Alden if you were to buy this instead? Well, the simple answer is I would say no. I don't think you'll be disappointed with this shoe. However, the more important question is whether or not the last and the fit is going to fit you as well as the Alden shoes. And that I obviously can't answer for you. But at least in terms of quality and the look and the details, I think you won't be disappointed in that regard. Probably the most important thing that I want to say in this video is that while Grant Stone was a brand that was inspired by Alden, in reality though, they are a very different animal. And one more thing I want to mention is that I do have an affiliate link below this video. So if you're interested in purchasing a pair of Grant Stone shoes or boots, you can help support my channel if you use that affiliate link. I will never ask you, the viewer, for any sort of money. I will only suggest that if you're shopping anyway, that you can use that affiliate link if you want to help support my channel. And I've noticed that many of you in the last few months have been using the affiliate link. So thank you very much. Well, I hope you got something useful out of this video. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon on the next video. Bye for now.